today on the Becoming Unique podcast, I have such a beautiful, amazing soul here by the name of Troy. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Unique. It's a pleasure to be here always, and thanks for creating this space where people like me could come and share with you guys. Thank you.
Yay.
Yeah,
You're welcome. And thank you for showing up for the Becoming Unique podcast and showing up in the world as you. So thank you.
yeah. Love.
So I would love to start off by you just telling everyone who is Troy.
Well, I was born and lived most of my life in Trinidad and Tobago in the Caribbean. I went to school in Florida. I've done quite a bit of traveling. I've been teaching yoga probably for over 15 years now internationally. I just released a book a few months ago. It's called My Name is Love. So I guess now I'm also considered an author. I'm
Mhm.
not too big on the labels. And, I'm just, when people ask who I am, or I've realized that all these labels, even a label like a name, like calling me Troy, now makes me separate from everything else around me because it now gives us that sense of identity that is different, that is separate. And I believe that there's so much of that in the world. We identify with all the things that make us different. And
Mhm.
we forget to identify with the things that make us the same.
Mhm.
So if you ask me who was Troy, I just hope that in any way I can at any point in time, that my contribution to human experience can remind us all what it means to love and help reconnect people to their understanding of God. And
Mhm.
that is what I identify with most. And of course, there are times when I fall short of that, and I myself might be out of alignment from that. And that's the work we have to do to be able to look at that and see, well, how can we get back in alignment? Where can we do better?
Mm, I love that. I love that. When you describe yourself, you said your contribution to,
Yeah,
and I love that because a lot of times we can get caught up in the labels. I'm a doctor, I'm a this, I'm a that,
yeah,
instead of, understanding the value that we hold within ourselves and that we do have the opportunity to contribute because we come here to share. We come here to
yeah.
love and to share what we have. And that's so beautiful. And congratulations on your new book,
No, thank you.
which you're welcome. Which I believe your shirt is the title of the book. What does your
Yeah.
shirt say?
It says my name is Love,
Mm,
and that is the name of the book. My name is Love. The subtitle is We're Not All That Different.
yes.
And it's funny because the book wasn't originally called that. It was originally called Popcorn in My Pocket.
Popcorn in my pocket?
Yeah, and that was when I was 20 years old, I came up with that name because I loved popcorn and I was with my girlfriend at the time, and I put my hand in my pocket and found stale popcorn and I ate it. And I said, Popcorn in My Pocket is going to be the name of my first book.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't know what it would mean at that point in time, but I finally crafted a book that fell in line with that title. And then, you learn in literary landscape and marketing, and you realize that that really doesn't say what the book's about. And luckily, I had a really amazing editor, last editor I worked with, and she helped me recognize that this was the name for my book because that's what I identify with.
Mm,
And the through line of this book is essentially helping us get out of our own way, get over our own sense of identity, get our head out of our so we can remember what it means to love.
mm,
And I believe that so often our identity and all the layers of our identity being our opinions, our labels, our ideas of right and wrong, our association with what we believe and our ideologies, all these, our sexual orientation, all these things separate us and they inhibit our ability to love one another if we don't have a real conscious relationship to them, you know?
Yeah. I absolutely love that you told me the title was Popcorn in My Pocket, because and then now that the new title is called My Name is Love, because I got from that, it showed attachment.
Mhm.
Okay. You were attached to that name. You told your girlfriend, you said this is going to be the name. You wrote the book. You said this is the name of my book. You were attached to it.
Yeah,
Then you had to surrender.
yeah,
You had to surrender.
yeah,
And it's so beautiful. Even though you were attached to that name, when you surrendered, you got something even more powerful.
yeah, far more. And one I have funny story is this journey was a journey of actually writing and crafting this book was about 4 years. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember doing this online course, this literary online course with I believe from New York. I believe it was a company called Lucinda Literary.
Mm-hmm.
And this was a course where you learn about the publishing world and your options and what to do with your book and all that kind of stuff. And I remember when I told her the name of my book, she said, she pretty much said, that's a terrible name. You need to change the name of their book. And I was like, no, of course, in my head, I'm like, no way, you don't know what you're talking about. This is a great name. It's so catchy and, all that kind of stuff. Forgetting that I was still an embryo, that I didn't know anything about the literary world yet. And very slowly it revealed itself, and I learned and I grew, and I was surrounded with amazing professionals in that landscape. And I finally understood that that was actually a terrible name.
I don't think it was a terrible name. I think it was a, a powerful name for you, because
Hmm.
it held something for you. So I
Yeah,
don't think the name was bad, but it
yeah,
was it was personal. That's what I'm looking for. The name
yeah,
was personal. You understood the story. You knew what it meant about
y-
popcorn in my
y-
pocket. But for the masses, for the collective, we would have to catch on to your uniqueness of that title. So I think and it's probably meant to be personal to you.
yeah,
I think popcorn in my pocket, I do think it's catchy, but I think you probably have to figure out, but we're on this journey. Somewhere along the
yeah,
something
yeah. I
something
mean,
may come out that says
it,
popcorn in my
it,
pocket.
it got us here, right?
Yeah, it got you
It
there.
got us here. So that means that it had its purpose. But like what you're pointing to, unique, is so important because I think for me, in the writing process, and I talk about this because it also applies to life,
Mm-hmm.
in us trying to get through to one another. Um, one of my biggest growing points in crafting and writing this book is that understanding that it landed for me, the message came through for me because I knew what I meant. Even for someone that knew me, knew what I represented and spoke about, they would have gotten what I wanted them to get. But there was a point when working with my editor, I had to realize that what if someone had no idea who Troy Hadeed was?
Mm-hmm.
And these concepts were completely foreign to them.
Yep.
Would they still get it? And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the time, the answer was no.
Yeah.
And that's when I had to go in and really look at my structure, my content, my wording, and question my own beliefs and communication to really get it right.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a line in the book that says, if you something like this, I can't remember it exactly, but if you really want to get through to someone, we have to go through their perspective and not
Mm-hmm.
force them through our perspective.
Exactly.
And I think that was one of my biggest teachers in this journey.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. One of my favorite quotes is start the walk and the way will appear.
yeah,
So popcorn in my pocket was the walk.
that's right.
Uh,
That's
in,
right.
in the way and in the way was my name is love,
Hmm.
and it wasn't expected to reveal itself until it revealed itself, and
Yeah,
the name is just so powerful, like book or no book, that just you wearing that shirt that says my name is love, that just emphasizes so much power and so much movement behind it by you walking down the street and the influence that you can have by someone reading that. You don't know what type of day they're going through, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden oh, it reminds them of the love,
Yeah.
because a lot of times our mind could be all over the place and thinking about what our coworker said and creating all of this drama in our mind. And then by them seeing your shirt, with this title of your book, it,
Yeah.
it can make a shift
Yeah.
instantly,
Yeah.
opposed to popcorn in my pocket. Like,
Yeah. It's a curiosity, but yeah.
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 Yeah. So, but I still love popcorn in my pocket. I still think you should keep carrying that and see where it decides
Yeah.
to show
Who
up.
knows? That might be another book to come.
Yeah, and where it
Yeah.
decides to show up in the future.
Yeah.
So, we'll get into a little more about your book then, what's it about. But I want to know, like, how long have you been this version of Troy, who you are today? How long have you been here?
Well, today I'm different than I was yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
But I know your question. I think I've been really committed to a different path, let's say, and to influence the world in a really beautiful, positive way as long as I can remember.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember at 10 years old, I always talk about this. At 10 years old, I wrote my first letter to the editor. And
Mm-hmm.
a copy of that letter was sent to President Bush, Saddam Hussein, Mikhail Gorbachev, and our current prime minister at that time, right? With my mom's help, of course.
Wow.
And I always look at my mom, and this was when the Gulf War was going on.
Mm-hmm.
So this letter, I was 10 years old. It wasn't like greatly written or anything, but it was a plea to the end of war and conflict and for
Mm-hmm.
people to take note of the pending environmental crisis. And I often used to wonder, like, what in the world convinced me to write that letter at 10 years old?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what was it? And I often go and ask my mom, and she can't remember. I mean, luckily my parents are still with me, but she's 84, and she's like, I don't know. I can't remember. And it's funny because what came through to me in my constant writing of the book, not to keep talking about the book, but I realized that when I was younger, I was ashamed of my privilege in a lot of ways, right? And I do believe that the greatest privilege of all that we don't often speak about is the privilege of love and security. But in addition to that, I'm light skinned, I'm male, I'm straight, I come from a financially comfortable family, I carry a name that carries a lot of stereotypes and it's known to be well off in Trinidad. So I grew up in a good neighborhood. So there's so many privileges I experienced and had the benefit of. And I recognized that from a young age because of the influence of reggae music and Rastafarian culture on
Mm-hmm.
my life in a very real way. I have brothers who are 7 years older, 7 and 10 years older. So I think through that exposure to reggae music and Rastafarian culture, it exposed me and opened me up to a reality that existed outside of my bubble.
Mm-hmm.
So in seeing that, on one hand, there was an underlying element of guilt and shame. But on the other hand, understanding the message of a lot of reggae musicians and that culture that I was tuning into, I think I realized that with my privilege and my benefits came a responsibility, and that I had a duty, and that I was going to do whatever I could to at least try to have a positive influence on the world around me.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay. Wow. You said quite a few things in here. I like that you told me that you wrote this letter when you were 10 years old. And, you know, we're on our journey. All of us are on a journey right now. And, we're discovering ourselves more and more every day. And a lot of times when we look back to our childhood, the answers were always there.
Yeah,
The answers. That's a lot of times when you want to figure out, who am I? What am I supposed to be doing? Look to your childhood, because when we were young, we were still in our divine destiny of like the energy that we're supposed to be going on. But of course, living in the world, we get influenced, we get, by
Yeah.
everyone else around us, people, your parents, everyone, they may have good wishes for you, but they're influencing you with their thoughts and so on. So,
Yeah.
which could be stealing from what was the lanes that we're supposed to be walking in. I'm so grateful that we're walking into an environment, we're coming into a state, of the world now, where people are starting to understand we are all individuals.
Yeah.
You birth that child, but that's,
Yeah.
but and you don't have to make the child like and to
Yeah.
understand, to let these children be who they are, so they can grow and develop into, the person that they're going to be. So I love that you told me about the 10-year-old piece that you did, because I just want to
Yes.
send a reminder, if we ever are on this journey and we're questioning so much, look back to your childhood. The answers were there. The
Yeah. And
answers.
I think too, Unique, it's so funny because like when I went to university, first thing I told my dad was, Dad, I'm not gonna work in a family business. So if you don't want to send me, you don't have to. I get it. It's cool. He said, I'm gonna send you to university. I was like, all right, great. I want to do writing and philosophy. That's my major. And he said, absolutely not. He's like,
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna study business. And
Mm-hmm.
it's so funny that, 20 years around now, look at where I am. And I don't think without the journey I've taken of the last 20 years of teaching yoga and excavating that stuff, I wouldn't have been ready to write this book.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is point on. I think we always know, and I think we always have that voice inside. And if we listen to that voice inside over a voice of the chatter and noise around us, we're always going to find a way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
See, you even knew it. Like, I don't
Yeah.
want to do that way. I don't, but we have the
Yeah.
influence, and we need to be mindful of that, because we get so lost. We get so lost
Yeah.
in the matrix that we forget who we are, you know.
Yeah.
And it's not just the parents, it's teachers, it's TV, it's the environment. Well, she looks like me, so I should be doing what she does, or he looks like me, and that's the lane I'm supposed to be going in. And then also you mentioning that, you were of your privilege, and
Yeah.
I'm assuming what I got from your story is that you felt you should be more of the struggle. Is that what you're saying? That
Yeah. Yeah. I just even today I was talking to a friend of one of my best friends, and we're like, man, there's so much suffering in the world.
Mhm.
There's so much suffering and pain in the world and struggle in the world. And it's not that in my later adulthood, my later adolescence, I would say, began to understand the struggle of my own ancestry, in that the Arab and Lebanese people who came to Trinidad also came here with nothing. Now it's a different struggle to the African people that came here and the Indian people that came here.
Mhm.
But it's just so interesting. I don't say that it was that I should have experienced more struggle, but it
Mhm.
was more like, why is everyone else experiencing struggle?
Mm.
Like
Yeah.
why is this world so painful, and why is there so much suffering? You
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
So do you think you took those emotions in, feeling their struggle, and like, oh, like, why, what can I do? Like, what, because you said you were like kind of embarrassed of the privilege, but then
Yeah.
you said you now questioning, why do they have to struggle? So were you like an empath with that and feeling it? Like, what was the
No,
energy around that?
no, I don't think so. I think it was more of one not wanting to be seen as separate and different. Um, and Caribbean culture, to me, at least in Trinidad, I could speak to, is so funny because being light skinned, I'm a minority in a big way,
Okay.
but it's a minority that carries the majority of the wealth.
Okay. It's a minority that's the majority.
Well, it's a minority that carries so much of the wealth,
Okay,
whether,
yeah.
right? So it like even points more to be like, yo, something is up here.
Mm-hmm.
Something is up. If a minority of a nation or civilization carries a large majority of the wealth,
Yeah.
there's something that has to be looked at, right? And I think that for me it was just like, yo, equality should be just wanting there to be equality and opportunity and wanting to do whatever I can to make the world a better place, I guess. You
Yeah,
know,
I
I
think
was,
it kind of that I feel like, I'm not of the Caribbean culture,
yeah,
but I'm of the African American culture, and I feel
yeah,
like it's also the same as well too. A lot of times, now I feel like the shift is happening, but of course,
yeah,
as a dark skinned African American a girl growing up, I'm seeing light skin advertisement, like I'm seeing all of
yeah,
standard of what beauty should be instead of and so
yeah,
on. And within the Black community, it's like the light skins will
yeah,
will be the ones
yeah,
to achieve it and stuff like that. So I think I think it's kind of like almost like a worldwide culture
yeah,
of
yeah,
the colorization, um
yeah,
being like that as well too. And yes,
yeah,
I agree. Like, why do we have to see the division? Why can't we just look for the soul of a person
yeah,
and make the decision if they qualify to move to the next level
yeah,
instead of
yeah,
like the outside appearance to be, like you said, a minority being the majority of
yeah,
that's holding in this position. But I don't know for you, I feel like collectively there's a shift happening
yeah, yeah. It's
now.
I mean, it's for me there has to be, right? It's the only way, I explain to people that it's the only way I can make sense of the human experience.
Hmm.
Because I'm fortunate enough where now I kind of live in forest. I live in nature,
Hmm.
no neighbors really. And just being in nature, it's an opportunity for me. I say there's a difference between being told of God and knowing God.
Say that again.
There's a difference between being told of God
Told of
and knowing God.
Okay.
And what I'm getting at is being in nature, living in nature for the last 10 years, it's like, it's undeniable to me that
Hmm.
there's some level of intelligence. Whatever someone wants to call it or direct it, I believe everyone has the opportunity to define their own relationship to God. But to
Hmm.
me, there's undoubtedly an intelligence.
Hmm.
And for me to look at the human experience, I mean, look at the world we live in,
Hmm.
look at Gaza, Palestine, Ukraine, what's happening in Africa. Look at all the suffering in the world, even within society. And you have to question, well, why? How? Why? How did this make sense? And what I'm getting at to answer your question, for me, it only makes sense that the human experience is grounded in some kind of spiritual growth and transformation.
Hmm.
And growth and transformation doesn't come easy. Sometimes it's uncomfortable.
Hmm.
And it doesn't happen in a lifetime, I don't believe. So if you were to zoom out and realize, all right, a lifetime is just like, all right, today I go to gym and my trainer kicks my ass. That's like a lifetime,
Hmm. Yeah.
and just like we would go to gym and get our ass kicked to get physically strong, I believe that on some mental, emotional, spiritual level, that human experience is about growth and transformation.
Yeah.
So I agree with you that right now there seems to be a shift or evolution happening. And I think it might get uncomfortable, might
Yeah.
get really uncomfortable. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, growth and transformation is there is going to be plenty of comfortability, the
yeah,
may make things seem like it's going to be roses and butterfly. I can't remember exactly how this statement or this quote went, but I felt it was so powerful, but I'll see if I could get the gist of it. It was something about what messes us up most in life is that I got it all wrong. But what messes up most in life is that, we're thinking of like the fantasy of the movies. So a lot of times we watch these movies. I can't even think of how the saying goes. I'm so tongue twisted. We watch these movies and it's always a happy ending. It's
Yeah,
always a beautiful journey. You don't feel the pain of the journey. You just see, within that 1 hour and
yeah,
38 minutes, you see the journey, and then you go into relationships and you expect for it to be roses and sunshine all the time, and not
yeah,
realize that's not how life works.
yeah,
That's the movie, and we have to, get out of that virtual reality that's not the real reality. And
yeah,
that's what's so important. And that's what messes us up in life, because we're still over here be like, oh, why didn't I get the roses? Why didn't I get the candy?
yeah,
This is what a relationship's supposed to be about, because this is what TV told me. And
yeah,
to realize, and to embrace that the journey, not every day is going to be fireworks. It's going to be a lot of
yeah.
quiet days, and be okay with that, and be okay with that journey within yourself, and
Mhm.
then you can look back, and be like, wow, I didn't even realize I got that far in the journey. But you can't, each step doesn't have to be a party.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely,
each,
absolutely.
each step doesn't have to be a
Yeah,
party. But you said
yeah.
you live in the forest now,
Yeah, well, I live
or
about
in nature?
30 minutes outside of the city at a place called Paramin on Trinidad's north coast. So it is where I live is very much in the forest. I've lived there for 10 years, but I have no neighbors that live there, put it that way. There are a few houses around, but no one actually lives there. It's more like they come on a weekend and so on. But I lived in a tree house for about 6 years.
An
Um,
actual tree house?
Yeah, it was a board house that hung off the mountain into trees. So it wasn't actually built in a tree. But it was very much,
Running water and
yeah, yeah.
okay.
I had water, even electricity, so it wasn't also like rusticy. But
Okay.
if I were to shout at night, no one would hear me, and I would be in the forest, deep in the forest. And yeah, that was an amazing experience in itself. I still live there, but luckily I was able to build a proper house. So now I no longer live in a tree house. It kind of was falling apart after
Mhm.
6 years.
Okay. And
Yeah.
and you wanted to move into the forest, to be not next to neighbors and stuff like that. That was by
Um,
choice. Were you going through like a meditative part of your journey? Like, what made you go into that location?
I think I was called to live there.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking for options of land to buy outside the city, and through a series of unplanned events, I ended up there looking at this parcel of land. It's kind of like a development with different big parcels, like 2 acre parcels on it. And
Mm-hmm.
when I stood on this one lot of land, it was almost like there's a voice that said, "Yeah, this is it. You can buy it now. This is it."
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
Um, so it's almost like I didn't really have a choice in the matter. And when I first bought that land, of course, nobody could see vision. Nobody understood it. They thought I was a little
Mm-hmm.
crazy. And yeah, it's turned out really beautiful. And yeah, it's that balance of every day I get to go back to that sense of peace and quiet and be in nature to really juice up to then come back into the city and do what I got to do.
Okay, nice, nice.
Yeah,
Okay, that sounds like a beautiful experience.
yeah,
So your book is called My Name is Love. So what's
yeah.
love? What is
Hmm.
love?
I think love means a lot of things to a lot of different people.
Mm,
And before I answer your question, I would say I think the question we often ask is, what is love? Or we categorize love. So we look at one situation and say that is love, and we look at another situation and say that is not love.
mm-hmm,
What I propose in my book is a shift of perspective.
mm,
I invite the consideration that love is like God and it's everywhere. There's
mm-hmm,
nowhere that love does not exist.
mm,
But a question we really need to ask is, what is being loved?
mm.
Because if I were to look at a situation and say that is not love,
Mm-hmm.
it's now dead. No
Mm-hmm.
love can be born of that. That situation is dead, and I've already labeled it as being devoid of love.
Mm-hmm.
But if I look at a situation and say that's love, but it's a selfish love, or it's a self-centered love, or it's a love of power, or a love of greed, or a love of oppression, or a love of, that is a self-centered, toxic love. Well, then you can acknowledge that vision of love and then work on flipping it around
Mm-hmm.
and work on that vision of love so you can spin it around to serve something greater than your own individual needs and desires.
Yeah.
And I think if we ask that question, we might find in our own lives a lot of areas where our love is self-centered.
Mm.
Because we have this thing where we love to look at, sorry, using we love a lot here. It's so diverse, that is we love. We like to look at all the areas of our lives where we're in alignment, where we show up from a place of love. But what we don't often do is look at all the areas of our lives where we're not. And that's where our growth and transformation lies, in the areas where we are not in alignment.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the areas we need to have the courage to look at.
Mm.
That's where growth and transformation lies. So I invite the question, what is being loved? Rather than asking, is this love or is this not love?
Mm.
But to answer your question, if I had to define love, love to me is the ability to see divinity and see God in the eyes of every human being, in all of creation, and then acting accordingly.
Mm.
It doesn't mean that we can't be in conflict. It doesn't mean that we can't disagree. It doesn't mean that we can't butt heads. It doesn't mean that we don't make mistakes or that there's no retribution for those mistakes. It means that when we're in conflict, when we're drawing our boundaries, when we're standing up for what we believe in, we do it in such a manner as if we were in the face of divinity, in the face of God, not in the face of an enemy or in the face of someone that is separate from us, but we
Yeah.
acknowledge that wholeness.
Yeah. Yeah, you said so many amazing points, and it kind of goes back to like what I was saying also about the movie. We think love is supposed to look like that, and they're not realizing that, like you said, it could be conflict, it could be many different things. It doesn't mean because love is there that there isn't conflict and struggle and all that other things to come with the journey. And as you were speaking, I thought of the quote from yoga: "The pose you're avoiding is the pose you need most." So
Yeah, yeah,
within life, we have to realize, yes, there are those comfy places that
yeah,
you want to be in, and you want to feel this cushy feeling, but the growth and transformation within your love, within life, is the
yeah,
places that you are trying to avoid. So it's so beautiful that you brought those to point. Could
yeah,
you, I'm just going to pause for one moment.
yeah,
Sorry.
no problem.
Okay.
Yeah,
I thought I was about to get interrupted. Sorry.
okay, cool, no
Yeah.
problem.
So thank you so much for just bringing that to light, because Hollywood society has, made us want to believe that it's only in this box. And
Yeah,
as you were speaking as well too, I thought about when you said when you wanted to go to college, and your father, and you was like, oh, I want to study philosophy.
yeah,
And in your father's mind and his perception, he probably thought that's not a career. You got to go for business.
yeah,
Doesn't mean that was his perception of it,
yeah,
but it didn't mean but that wasn't the career path that you were destined to go down. And as
yeah,
you see, it's a valid career. It's just
yeah,
because someone else's belief system doesn't believe that's a career, or that's the way to go in life, that doesn't mean it's your truth. So I'm happy
yeah,
that we're having this conversation, because we have to be reminded of our truth. What is
yeah,
your truth? So, and like you didn't give us like one definition to love. You kept it very open, because
hmm
it's going to be an open, an open answer, because just like your life is open,
Yeah.
it's all open. So there's no boxes, and and I think we're moving forward, because I definitely feel a shift within the universe and within the times. Like I felt like 20, 30 years ago, we were in this box. We were in a big box.
Yeah.
This is the rules. You go to
Tight.
school, you did this, like you follow these things, and this is the way to go. You get the 2 car, the house, the
Yeah.
kid, the dog, the garage, and all that type of stuff. But shift is definitely here.
Yeah.
We're moving, and these conversations need to be had, because someone in the older generations may be still stuck in this box and
Yeah.
not realize, so this is the reminder to, it's okay for us to step out the box. It's okay for you to have your own perception, or not perception, but your own truth. And it's okay for someone else to perceive your truth different from theirs. It's fine. Read
Yeah.
it and send them love. It's okay for their belief system. That's their belief system for them. And you don't have to try to change them to try to make them believe in your belief system, but the value of just knowing, your truth. And
Yeah.
as I'm having this conversation, I'm like thinking, like, is love truth? True, love is God, like you said.
Mhm.
And also truth is coming to me, like, like, what's your truth? That's where the love is for you, and it's like the beautiful lie. Like, and I think that's what we've been living in for so long, the beautiful lie. And then,
Yeah.
a lot of people have been saying they loving situations because it's quote unquote the way to go, but yet
Yeah.
it wasn't the love, it wasn't their truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
So truth is channeling in a lot for me right now with that,
Yeah.
with the love. But you said also, when you were answering the question, what is being loved? So what's the answer to that? What is being loved? Was it like, because you said the question is not what is love, what is being loved? So what is being loved is, are you referring to that in reference into loving thyself or others loving us?
No, no, no. What I mean is, all right, let me draw an example, right?
Yeah.
A really simple example. If I am eating lunch and I find myself next to someone who hasn't eaten for days and they just want some food to eat, I have the option to share my food with them, but I choose not to.
Mm.
That's still love, but that's the love of my own desires and wants. That's the love of my belly. That's the love of my
Yeah.
own satisfaction over a love of someone else
Mm-hmm.
and their desires and wants. You understand?
Yeah.
So what I mean by that question is to look at a situation and ask, what is that person loving?
Yeah.
What is being loved? For instance, I mean, let's say there was a war,
Mm-hmm.
right? Let's say there was a war. And all right, I'm trying to rephrase from withhold from your reference, but let's look at Gaza. You have Israel, you have Palestine. There's a war. You can look at that and say, that's not love. Well, part of that is love.
Mm-hmm.
But you can look at it and ask the question, well, what is being loved? Is it the love of power? Is it the love of land? Is it the love of one's culture and love of one's people? But there's love in that situation. And we have to look at, if we ask that question, what is being loved? We might be able to see where that love is self-centered and
Mm-hmm.
not a love of the collective. It's a love of maybe of a group of
Mm-hmm.
people,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was a very edgy reference, but I'm sorry it came out.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fine. And thank you for bringing that up, because then it allows us to, again, have the conversation to be open, like, am I moving in a self-centered position of my
Yeah.
love. And, you know, I think we are definitely in a culture where it's all about the self-centered love. Well, that's
Yeah.
mine. You know, I'm doing this for
Yeah.
me, you know, and I think
And
about the bigger picture and the collective or the person next to us. And honestly, it's like we have blinders on. We don't even see the person next to us. So if
yeah.
the person next to me was eating, just sitting there with no plate of food, I'm not gonna look over and say, "Hey, have you eaten?" You know, and
Yeah.
inquire because I'm just in my zone of my loving myself and fueling my
Yeah.
body.
And self-love now is going crazy.
Yeah.
It's going nuts. And you know what? I hear so much people use it and reference it without really understanding. Like it's very important. You can't love others or take care of others if you don't take care of yourself and make sure you're in alignment and ready and steady to do so.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I would almost say the majority of times that I've heard self-love reference,
Mm-hmm.
it's almost avoidance in disguise.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And if our self-love does not prepare us to serve something bigger than ourselves, it's just selfish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think we have to be really careful at this love of self and the labels we put on it and where we choose to use it and to what degree we take that philosophy, you know?
Yeah. You know, this is having this conversation is allowing someone to ponder about it as well too and think about on the deeper level. Um I the caption on my Instagram, like my bio,
Yeah,
I have it says, let's collectively rise the vibration by taking care of ourselves, self-love. So I'm a true believer that we have to first take care of ourselves, so you know, because we can't pour from an empty
yeah,
cup. So, you know, and then once we're able to fill our cup up, we'll be available, you know, to pour the light, the love, and so much more into ourselves. But I like to say, let's collectively raise the vibration because if all of us are, you know, starting to point to
yeah,
ourselves, because we do have a lot of depleted people out here, and then
yeah,
people don't understand why they're angry, why they're
yeah,
lashing, why they're stealing, why they're doing all of these stuff in a lower vibration because you know they need to spend a little more time focusing on themselves so they can collectively give back into the world in a more higher vibration than in a lower vibration.
yeah. You know what I've also considered unique, and it's very, very it lands for me, and I see it a lot in I've been in relationship with people sometimes, and sometimes I wonder, I'm not a psychologist, but it makes sense to me that if in our childhood or in our upbringing we experience this undying love and support from our family and our community, we grow up with that conditioning of being loved.
Mm-hmm.
So we no longer, it's easier now for us to give up that love and extend that love because our conditioning isn't one that questions our lovability.
Mm-hmm.
Our it doesn't question whether we're lovable or
Mm-hmm.
not. And so we don't feel like someone may not feel like they have to do everything they can to give themselves that love because no one else gave it to them.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if someone has grown up in circumstances and conditions where they never felt safe, loved, or secure, I understand why coming into adulthood maybe. They may need to do everything they can
Mm-hmm.
to love themselves first. That might just simply be part of their process and curriculum. That might be a necessary step before they're able to really extend love to everyone else.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. You
Yeah,
know, again, we're just going back to this being it's a very individual
yeah,
journey. You know,
yeah,
we got to figure out, you know, we just got to figure out like
yeah,
what's your journey, you know, what's your path and step out of the box of what we think it's supposed to be because also everyone shows up differently. And also when you were speaking, food came to mind when you were speaking about the different ways you know loving and so on like that, because I thought about food. And I'm like, okay, food is a general topic, like love, but food comes in so many varieties. It can come in
Yeah.
vegetables, it can come in fruit, it can come in meat, it can come in processed food.
Hmm.
It could come so many different ways. All of them are going to fuel us in different types of ways. Maybe that processed food will fuel us in a lower vibrational way and not be a little more toxic on us, where the apple that you pull off the tree may be so much more nourishing,
Yeah.
for your cells and for your body, and so on. So it comes in so many different forms. The person that's fueling themselves through food, that box, cereal and that apple, they're both fueling their body. And just like love, you may be fueling it from this end, from this spectrum or that spectrum, but at what level are you fueling it? So this conversation today is just bringing awareness, so we can all sit there and journal or have a conversation about it to ourselves on what level am I fueling myself and also the collective with my love and so on. So
Yeah.
I mean, I thank you for it. Let's really getting in, digging a little deeper with love. I mean, I don't necessarily think this is a conversation that's had, you know, I don't necessarily hear it often.
Yeah.
I hear a lot of other things often, a lot of other places in the healing departments, how do I heal my gut? How do I heal this? How do I heal
Yeah.
that? Talking about the most foundational piece is about love. This is a beautiful place to be. And
Yeah.
it's so beautiful that have given to the collective, given to the world a book called My Name is Love. So
Yeah.
definitely you got to tell us what's inside the pages of your book.
Yeah, well, what's also funny, which leads into it really beautifully, Unique, is that the book is a self-help book, but the last thing I ever wanted it to be was a self-help and categorized as a self-help book. Because self-help books are generally, how can I do this for me? For me, for me, for me, for I.
Mhm.
And this book, My Name is Love, is essentially how can I dissolve this obsession with I and me so I can serve something greater than myself every
Mhm.
day in my relationships and how I live my life. So essentially to me it's a big self. It's how do I dissolve a small self so that I can serve a bigger idea of self, a collective idea of self. um, and a book is not a memoir. It's almost a blend of memoir, philosophy, teaching, and then the end of every chapter has these beautiful little reflection questions, because that's also something I said I did not want a book to have, is questions like a workbook. But things change. And I think they're really powerful and important, because I think in the world we live in, we're talking about all these beautiful teachings and ideologies and ideas, and we're posting these posts on social media, and we're reposting them, and we're reading these books, but we're not, there's a disconnect between the idea of them,
Mhm.
even the understanding of them, and the
Mhm.
embodiment of them.
Mhm.
There's a disconnect happening.
Yeah.
And we need to start asking question, how does it apply to my life?
Mhm.
Where can I do better?
Mhm.
And that's really where work is. And essentially, that is what I think the foundation of the book is about. It's
Mhm.
about me sharing stories from my life and these teachings and philosophies, asking a reader, allowing a reader a space to see how it lands for them.
Yeah.
What does it mean for them in their life?
Mhm.
And how can they live, or what can they do differently? You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Start the walk and the way will appear.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So we can have this idea of what we think it's supposed to be, but in the end, the journey will reveal itself. And even though you thought you wasn't going to put the reflection questions, it's beautiful that you did, because then it also is a check-in. Are you
yeah,
are you connected with what's going on here? You know, are
Yeah,
you embodying it, and or is there a disconnect? And
yeah,
you know, the reflection questions, I think it's definitely a beautiful place to be, and you know, to allow the reader to dig deeper. And like I
yeah,
said, for us to have this conversation and allow the listener to think like, you know, as we're bringing points to the table, like, oh,
yeah,
wait a minute, I didn't see it that way. Or maybe, you know, maybe it is time for me to step out of the box that I've grown up in for so long, and to move forward, and so on. So amazing, amazing, amazing.
yeah.
Um, how big is the book? Is it
Because 250 pages.
okay?
It's
So
it's
medium.
honestly, I believe it's an easy read. You know, I've had one or two people tell me they've read it in a day, and I was like, what? But yeah, it's an easy read. It's a really easy read. It's also a kind of book you can pick up and put down and pick up and put down, or maybe skip chapters and read another one. It's
Mhm,
also a kind of book that you can read again and again and again every year for the rest of your life. And I think
mhm,
something different will jump out to you. Something different will land for you, you know?
mhm. So my
Yeah.
question to you is, do you want people to read it in one day?
Um,
How, yeah, I know they can pick up and go, or they can read in one day, like you've been told. But what do, as the author, what was your, you know, suggestion or thoughts behind, like, how do you want the reader to, you know, receive the book? Do you want them to like take a moment to reflect on each chapter, and you
yeah.
know?
Well, I'm gonna play on a lot of your pointing today and say that I think for everyone is different.
Yep.
And I think for every individual, they'll move through a book in their way and how their life allows. And some people might pick up a book and close it and put it down and pick it up in 20 years and then be like, holy crap. You
Hmm.
know, some people may not be ready for content yet.
Yeah.
Some people will. And I think everyone has their own way of absorbing that information, you know.
Yeah.
I'll put it out there. And I'm here if anyone has questions. But
Yeah.
I, and I'll keep promoting and pumping and marketing this book and pushing it. And I'll start writing book two. But aside from that, once the reader picks up this book, it now has a life of its own. It's between the
Mhm.
reader and the content, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. Oh my goodness. So much beautiful conversation today.
yeah.
Before we close out the show, do you want to leave any last words, or have any last statements to say?
I would just say that you know, I think sometimes in the human experience we encounter situations or people and we get really riled up and in opposition to everyone. You know, life is challenging sometimes and human relationship is challenging.
Mhm.
And you know, I have a quote tattooed on my arm that I love to repeat because I wish I had found it so much earlier, but it says, I have not come to teach, I have come to love, and love will teach.
I never
And
heard it. I like that one.
yeah, I think it's so powerful because we always want to make someone wrong or prove ourselves right or judge or critique someone's behavior or opinions. And
Mm-hmm.
you know, sometimes people just need to be loved and supported, and that love will do what it needs to do. You
Mm,
know, yeah.
amazing. Who's the author? Who's the author of that quote? Do you,
I've researched it many times, and there's no known author. I even cite it in my book as an unknown author because I even asked ChatGPT and they didn't know either.
okay. Okay. It's
Yeah,
such an amazing quote.
yeah,
I wish I mean, I feel like I haven't seen it. Well, I
yeah.
gotta
And
read
I've
it first.
actually seen it cited by different people.
Mm-hmm.
So this website would say this one said it. Then this website would say, well, this one said it. Then this website would say, this one said it.
Okay.
So I just decided, you know what? God said it because we don't do anything. It comes through us.
Yep.
So whoever it came through, not all that important, but
Yes.
it's very clear to me where it came from.
Yep. Came from God.
Yeah,
So before I actually close out the show, I have to ask you my last question, which is
shoot.
what does becoming unique mean to you?
Um, I think it, I think we all are unique. I think to become unique would be kind of like an oxymoron because I think we are already unique. So I would say to realize our uniqueness
Mm,
would be to really just listen to the voice of the heart over the voice of the mind.
mm,
Because I believe that the voice of the heart is tuned to the frequency of divinity. That's why God speaks to every one of us. And the voice of the mind is not only our own mind, it's everyone else's mind that tells us how we should live our lives and who we should be and what we should look like and what choices we should make. And I believe when we learn to disassociate from that and know the difference, that's
mhm.
when we begin to understand our uniqueness.
Amazing. I love that. Listen to the voice of the heart, not the voice of the mind.
That's chapter 14.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so you gave me some,
Yeah,
you left me with two great quotes. Okay.
yeah,
I have not come here to teach, I come here to love. Love will teach. And then voice of the heart, listen to the voice of the heart, not the voice of the mind.
yeah.
Love it.
Check Unique and see if I sent you that link to
Yeah,
his book.
I'll double
Yeah.
check.
And
Yeah, sometimes I'm skimming.
if you prefer a physical copy, I could get one sent to you. So you just
Yeah.
let me.
Uh,
Yeah,
yeah, no, the digital would be perfect.
yeah.
So, thank you so much for showing up for the Becoming Unique podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Unique. And I want to say for your listeners as well, and to you, I often believe listeners don't always realize the energy and commitment it takes to host a podcast and to allow people like me a voice. So I want to say to you again, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
Namaste.
Love, namaste.